Yes, I'm not exactly you're referring to. You may be talking about our reforms to the refugee system. These reforms will create for the first time ever a new appeal that people can make at the Immigration Refugee Board. So Coptic refugee claimants or refugee claimants from anywhere who fail in their application for refugee status will now have a new, full, fact-based appeal in the Immigration Refugee Board. This gives a new level of procedural fairness and protection because we want to be sure as a country that we do not send away people who do need Canada's protection, people who do have a well-founded fear of persecution in their country of origin.
Okay.
So actually, this is a very positive change that I'm sure will be supported by Coptic Canadians, also because the reforms will ensure that we give protection to real refugees who are facing persecution in about 4 months rather than forcing them to wait for nearly 2 years, which is currently the case. So these are very positive reforms, and it also involves an increase in the number of resettled refugees that we will accept. I'm talking about people who have obtained convention refugee status from the United Nations. To give you one example, right now I've announced and we are implementing a very generous program to welcome to Canada Iraqi Christians who have been bombed out of their homes in Baghdad and elsewhere.
Great.
Whose churches have been destroyed. And they have fled into Syria, into Jordan. They've received UN Convention refugee status, and we are receiving now 4,000 of them per year. That's a number we will actually increase as a result of the refugee reforms that I have announced, and which have all party support in the House of Commons.
Very good.
But let me take you back to the Coptic community here and transfer to you what I've learned. Actually, we had an activist a moment ago from the Liberal Party, and they really see this, you say, about the acceleration of process and everything, and these are all good stuff, but they see this as a threat, and I'll tell you why. They say because in the United Nations there is a list of countries that the United Nations sees as countries that have persecution and discrimination against some minorities. Egypt, for some political reasons, and you know why, probably is not one of the countries listed on the list. Now we hear that the Canadian government will follow the list, will give priority to people from the countries on the list. In this case, the Coptic minority will lose their privileges, right?
No, that's completely false. Could I ask you the name of who told you that?
Well, we made our research. I will ask people if they want to release their names, and I promise I'll get back to you.
Okay, I thought you said that this was a spokesman for the Liberal Party on your program.
We just met with a speaker from the Liberal Party, Mr. Michael Barsoum, and we were talking about those changes, and we did our research before we talked to you, and we gathered the information. Of course, you have the right to deny him, or we hope you can deny him, please.
Oh, no, I'd just like to know who's lying to your listeners, because that is a complete, absolute, total lie. That is a lie, and I understand why someone from the party of Omar al-Ghabra would be going on your program and trying to scare people in the Coptic community like that. That is outrageous, and I demand that this man make an immediate retraction. I'll be writing him a letter demanding that in fact, his own party, the Liberal Party, and its leader, Michael Ignatieff, support the reforms we're making to the refugee system. There is no such list at the United Nations.
Okay.
I don't know what he's talking about.
Okay.
We do have a provision to identify safe countries of origin that are democracies which protect human rights, from which at least 85% of refugee claims are rejected. I think out of Egypt, the number of refugee claims that are accepted is much higher than that. It's over 40%. So this is fear mongering, political fear mongering, and I can't imagine why frankly, someone in the party of Omar Al-Ghabra would be trying to do that with the Coptic community. It's disgraceful.
Mm-hmm. So what you are saying is that the Coptic community will not lose any privileges. They will. Do you still see them as a community that faces persecution, actually escalated persecution, right?
To the contrary, the reforms that we have proposed, and which the Liberal Party, the Democratic Party, the Bloc Québécois, all parties in the House of Commons support, the Canadian Bar Association, the Canadian Council of Refugees, all support. These reforms would actually add procedural fairness and protection to Coptic and other refugee claimants. It would give them a new appeal division, which the Liberal Party refused to grant to refugee claimants in the past. The Liberal Party said if a Coptic refugee claimant lost their application at the IRB, they would then be subject to deportation from Canada without a fact-based appeal at the IRB. We think the Liberal policy was wrong. That's why we're adding a new appeal division. It is true that there will be we will speed up the processing of claims.
Yes.
For people coming from democratic countries that respect human rights, provide protection to minorities, the overwhelming, from which countries there is an IRB acceptance rate of under 15%. That would not include Egypt, and so the Egyptian Coptic claimants would be on the regular process. The only thing that happens here is they get new additional access to an appeal division, which the Liberal government refused to give, and maybe Omar Al-Ghabra and his friends could explain why they were opposed to this appeal division for Coptic refugee claimants.
That's a great news, Mr. Kenny, and we are glad that you are. Let me just make a quick correction. Mr. Michael Barsoum only told us about the acceleration and the fear within the Coptic minority. He didn't tell us about the UN list. That was part of some researches we made online about the talks within the Liberal Party against the Conservative Party in Canada, and you just clarified this. Let me ask you a final question here, sir, about some complaints. Do you receive any complaints? Because we've been told that Egyptians, the Egyptian MC in Cairo, the Canadian MC in Cairo, we receive complaints about red tape, a lot of red tape, a lot of complexities that the families of the Canadian Egyptian people face when applying for visitor visa in Canada. Did you receive any of those complaints? Do you hear about them? If you do, what do you think should be done to face this?
Yeah, we receive complaints like that, of course, from visa applicants from our Cairo mission, as well as all of our immigration missions abroad. Canada requires visas for the citizens of 145 countries, and I can tell you every single day I hear complaints from people from all across the world, not just Egypt, not just Copts, about the difficulty of getting visas. Having said that, I'm pleased to tell you that the most recent data shows that 77% of visitor visa applicants from Egypt have their applications approved. So that means only 23% are not approved. And I can also tell you, I personally visited the Canadian Embassy in Cairo last May after meeting with Pope Shenouda. I went there because I had heard these specific concerns expressed by the Coptic community in Canada, and some people had made allegations of discrimination or unfair treatment. I wanted to get to the bottom of those allegations, so I went to our mission in Cairo. I spent a day visiting there, meeting with our officials, and I can tell you that none of our locally employed staff in the Cairo embassy are empowered to make decisions on applications for visas or immigration. All of those decisions are taken by members of the Permanent Canadian Public Service who are located for 2 or 3 years in Cairo. And also I can tell you that most of the locally engaged staff who I met with are actually members of the Coptic community. And I could find no evidence of unfair treatment or biased treatment. And if people ever have evidence of such a situation, we invite them to bring it to my attention. We have every intention of ensuring that the immigration laws are applied in a fair and objective way.
Okay.
And that obviously persecuted minorities are not disadvantaged in the process of applying for visas or immigration.
Great. Mr. Jason Kenney, the Canadian Minister of Immigration, thank you very much. Again, if there is any plan to have stricter practices against any Coptic communities, even if it is the right decision, it is absolutely the wrong time, and you just clarified the situation. Thank you very much, Mr. Kenney.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity.